Hey guys, hello and welcome back to my channel. First of all, extreme apologies for not uploading the video yesterday. I had some unavoidable tasks to finish before I could upload this video. So yes, that is the reason for the delay, and I'll try that in future we are not delaying any of our master classes, especially because I understand it is important for you all to do it on time so that you can finish the assignments over the weekend. Anyways, starting with the class. So in today's master class, which is for IGCSE English, we are going to look at letter writing skills. Although letter writing in today's world sounds a little redundant, but it is an essential quality in your professional life, especially when you're dealing with professionals and dealing with people who are into businesses and corporates. This skill, not only writing but also the speaking skills, is a very, very important skill. Now, in IGCSE, there is something called as email writing also, which is similar to letter writing. So when we are learning the concepts of letter writing, we are going to cover the concepts of email writing as well. Myself, Karishma. And in case until now you have not followed me on my Instagram profile, do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle here. I do update a lot of things which is quite relevant to what you want to know, that is your IGCSE preparation, on my Instagram handle. And let's get started with the class right now. So moving on to my screen, as you all can see, I always tell you this thing, that before we begin, please get a pen and a paper. I would prefer you to make a separate book for my master classes wherein you can take notes, write important stuffs, because more than what I show on my screen through my presentation, there are certain important things that I talk it out, which in flow while I'm explaining certain concepts, and you might need to jot it down in your book. So that is one first very important thing that you guys need to do. Second is, again, a very distraction-free room. That's what I expect you all to sit in, and not forget to watch this particular masterclass until the end, even if it is a little longer, because it is important to watch it in a single shot or a flow. In at least maximum you can do it, you can divide it into two separate time, and then you can finish watching the same. But I would highly recommend you all to watch it in a single go. So sit in a distraction-free room and watch this masterclass. Next is, before you start writing, so first of all, in your IGCSE paper, you generally get an insert, which is a comprehension, which you read and answer the comprehension questions. Based on the similar ideas, you also get your extended or directed writing, wherein you write the letter or whatever type of question is asked. So in letter writing, one first very important thing that you all need to do is read and identify what is the base of your letter. Very important. The base of your letter. For example, if you're writing a letter to a bank complaining about the raised overdraft service charges, or you are writing a letter to your school principal, or you are writing a letter to your friend, to your grandma, to your relatives, to the elders, or to the youngers, whosoever you are addressing the letter to, you have to first make that clear in your head, and what are you going to talk about in the letter. Once you're done with that, you are supposed to examine the tone or the language of the letter. Okay, announcement to another printed material to which you will respond. So here in this case, we have the insert. We are going to respond, or we are going to take some inspiration from the insert if possible, and you might end up getting an idea, okay, what is the exact tone that the examiner is expecting you to write. Most important is, it is pretty clear from the question itself. So when you look at the question, read it a couple of times, try comprehending the same clearly in your head, and then identify the tone you're going to stick to. If it is informal letter, okay, you should be talking in a tone which is very friendly. If you're talking to your elders informally, you should be very respectful towards them. If you are talking to your to the people, to the audience who are younger than you, still you should have a tone which is matching their style of speaking. Okay, so this is very, very important in letter writing. Next is identify your audience and the purpose in order to determine the type of letter you write. Again, formal or informal letter, the identification can only be done by identifying the audience we are addressing. Nobody is going to give you ready-made in the question that you are supposed to write a formal letter or an informal letter. So we have to identify on our own that what type of letter we should be writing. Okay. Before we go ahead with the part of identification, how to identify a letter, let's first understand certain common and basic mechanics of every letter, because these mechanics will help us to write a better letter. First very important thing, as you all can see on my screen, is pronoun or point of view. Now what is pronoun? So basically you should be using the right pronoun and you should be talking from a first person point of view. I, he, she, it, we, they, you. These are the pronouns that you can use, of course. And do not refer to yourself in the third person by using one or the writer, because it's a direct address. Direct address to the reader. Okay. And you have to understand that you are not writing a letter from a third person's point of view. It is perfectly natural and appropriate to refer to yourself as I and to the reader as you, because you are writing a letter and it is understood that this letter will be opened by somebody who is supposed to read it. So you can address that person as you and yourself as I. Do not be under the impression to address anybody as they or something which is not sounding appropriate and relevant. Okay. Now moving on to the next slide, that is focus and specificity. What do you mean by focus? Especially for the formal letters, it is important to give some background information about what are you going to talk about, and then come to the actual discussion part, wherein, for example, if you're writing a letter wherein you are complaining to the bank manager about the increase in the service charges for a specific service they are providing. So first you have to talk about your account details, your name, when did you open your account, and some background detail. And in the next paragraph you will talk about the problem or the inconvenience caused due to the increased service charges on certain services offered by that particular bank. While you do that, try not to extend it unnecessarily, because one thing that we need to understand is the bank manager doesn't have all the time in the world to read only your letter. At the same time, we have to make sure that our sentences are not choppy. It should be able to convey complete sense, whatever we are trying to convey, without creating a confusion or a wrong emotion, without sending out a wrong emotion. If you are trying to sound firm, make sure your sentence sound that, but they should not be sounding rude. Similar things are applicable in your informal letters also. Of course, we write a little more in informal letters because here we are trying to develop, we know somebody, we know that person. And in this letter, we ask about their whereabouts, we talk about ourselves, and then we talk about the topic we are trying to discuss on. However, don't unnecessarily keep on repeating the stuffs. When you talk about a certain point, make sure you are not repeating and you are following the right structure. Many times I get this is a common point of discussion amongst me and my students, that what do you exactly mean by the structure? So if you guys watch movies, I'm sure you guys must be watching movies, you understand one thing, that there should be a connect between the scene, like the third scene and the second scene, the fourth scene and the third scene. If there is no connect between the scenes, you will be lost in the complete movie. Moving on to the third point, that is use terminology and concepts related to industry and field. Jargons may be appropriate in business writing. Again, in a formal letter, jargons are fine, but yes, we have to maintain the tone of the letter. The next type of mechanics is active and passive voices. I'm sure you guys are aware of what are active voice, what is an active voice, and what is a passive voice. And passive sentence, it was discovered that for example, it's an example given here. It was discovered that the salary totals were incorrect. Is it a complete sentence? No, it is not a complete sentence, because you just get to know that, okay, salary totals were incorrect. Which salary? Who did that? Who, what is the exact problem? Who discovered about it? All these things needs to be talked about. Needs to be talked about in the letter. We cannot just write incomplete phrases and sentences. It is technically not possible for the examiner or anybody who is reading your letter to understand what are you trying to convey. It should be a standard practice by us to make sure that we are conveying the information completely without eating up any important part. Okay, and that's what we need to talk about. So very easy trick to make sure that we do that is use active sentences. Active sentences can immediately change the information conveyed, because it will have the subject in it and it will give the information to the reader who did that. Okay, now moving on to the next slide, wherein we are going to understand what are informal letters. I'm sure you all must be aware of this type of letter. Informal letter is usually to your friends, family, or anybody who is your close acquaintance. Okay, and generally in the informal letter we talk about recent event which you took part in and they didn't. This is a general case in the papers, but it might not be a regular case. So informal letters are supposed to be warm, cheerful. If you're writing it from that tone, it shouldn't be rude, it shouldn't be too bland. I would say it should have a lot of emotions. So informal letters should have a lot of emotion. Emotive language can be utilized over here. You can use imagery. Now since you are, let's say you are describing an event, use imagery over here. If you are talking about a particular person, talk about the behavioral aspect. Talk casually, write as if you are talking casually to somebody who is close to you, and that is what is your informal letter. Now introduction part of informal letter, very 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 simple trick to do it is ask about, please ditch how are you, ditch the boring how are you doing. Please do not do that. I never encourage my students to do it. It's too redundant, conventional and boring stuff to write that. Instead of start something like as if you know the person so damn well. It was good to hear from you if you're applying to the letter, or how were your exams, you don't like this particular subject, I'm sure you must have cracked it, then the hardworking person you are, or I'm sorry for taking so long to reply to this letter. So talk as if you know the person really well. Even if you don't know, you have to show it. That creates that warmth between you and the reader. Talk as if you care about that person. Talk as if you are proud about that person. You are a hardworking guy and you are inspiration, whatever. Make sure you feel the reader, you make the reader feel good about himself or herself. And that's what is expected in the introduction. So congratulations on your award. It's been a hectic week, and little bit talk about yourself and your day and your week. Yourself and your whereabouts. So what you will have, first you will start with them, then you will move on to yourself, and gradually you will move on to the topic you want to talk about in the next paragraph. So the first thing is talking about them, then asking about them. Don't ask in an indirect way, like I hope you're doing well, or you, and then you will talk about, you can use this, show them that you know about them, you care about them, you're proud about them, and then you talk about yourself, your life recently, what has happened in your life, and then slide to the main topic. Okay, tell them why you are writing the letter. This will be specified in the question paper itself. Keep it very short. In the example above, you could say, I have been dying to tell you about this circus that came to town last Friday. So as I mentioned, you asked about them. You asked about the reader. You use these three strategies: know about them, care about them, and show praise them. Basically, praise them on certain things, and which is a genuine quality in them. And then you will be talking about yourself, then your life, and then slide into the important aspect, that is what happened and why is this letter, what is this letter all about. Moving on to the next slide is body of the letter. Now in an informal letter, use a lot of adjectives and verbs, and they really relay your thoughts and emotions. Use imagery, use emotive language, use empathy, use figurative language, figurative speech, okay, or figurative language you can say. So this will basically enhance the aesthetic of your writing skills. It will make the reader visualize what you're trying to convey. You know, this style of writing, very well linked sentences. Try to stick to compound or complex sentences. Okay, because simple sentences fair, but simple sentences, if you read a simple sentence, you might not be able to convey the emotion or the meaning to the fullest. So you can use compound or complex sentences because it connects what happened with what you are trying to say very well. So try practicing using compound and complex sentences in your writing. It will help you to enhance your writing skills very well. Use the prompts and the pictures in the question. You can write it in 2 paragraphs to organize your ideas. In example above, you could write. Okay. So here you can use 2 paragraphs in informal letters, but formal letter has a different style of writing, which we will see further. Let's look at an example. Okay, in this actual content of your letter, okay, here I have written, nobody knew about the circus arriving. So basically this letter is about the event of a circus in your which you attended last week, and you are talking about that in the letter. Nobody knew about the circus arriving, but the moment they opened the entrance, all the villagers started flocking in. Very, very, very good phrase. Steve and I begged for mom and dad to take us there. It was magnificent in every sense of the word. What is it? Which kind of sentence? See, they are trying to create that imagery here. Villagers started flocking in. It was magnificent in every sense of word. Hyperbole. That figurative language is used over here. There were talking parrots, tigers jumping through fire hoops. Steve ran away scared. So here he's trying to use the personal, personalization over here. We are talking a little more about what happened and how did Steve react to that. An elephant that could predict your weight, a fortune teller, and all sorts of things you see in the circuses in movies. Mom was fascinated by the guess the price tent and spent a lot of money on it, but didn't guess a single one right. So Dad and I went to every single tent. My favorite was the magic show. The magician literally turned a rat into a rabbit. I have no idea how. It was truly magical. We stayed there till dusk and then we reluctantly went back. The circus clearly had won the hearts of all the villagers. It's very well written, and it is quite persuasive that how beautiful, magnificent, and one of the best experience of their life it was. This is how your body should look like. Pause the video here and try reading it one more time to absorb the important phrases which you feel, and if you want, just note them down in your vocabulary bank. It always helps. Like flocking in, you can talk about truly magical, is still fine, but in every sense of the word, we stayed till the dusk, we were very reluctantly. You can just copy and add few phrases or words in your vocabulary bank. Moving on to the next slide, that is your conclusion. Now when we talk about conclusion has to wrap up the letter. For example, I really wish you were there. You would have loved it. Give my regards to Margaret and Aunt Mary. Reply soon. This is one way of concluding. Or you can also talk about if you can join us next time, you can join us and we will go together. Something which will make the other person feel included in your life. Make them feel included. See, let me tell you one thing. Language, where as far as I have learned until now, is not only about the vocabulary and the phrases and the sentences. It is how well you are able to induce the emotions you are going through in your sentences. And that person, irrespective of whatever level of vocabulary you are using, that sentence is of utmost weightage, because it is doing the right, the most appropriate thing, which is communicating. What is the meaning of the language? To communicate what you feel. So if you are able to induce your feeling in your language with the right usage of words, and make the other person feel good, if you want them to feel good about it, feel good, then you are the person who knows it very well and can use it very well. That is the essence of language, and that's what you should be doing here. Make the reader feel good about it, feel him or her included in your life, because this is an informal letter. Like next time when you come here, we'll surely visit, whatever, you have to think about it and write. So that is very, very, very crucial and important aspect. Here we end the informal letter, and before that we are going to look at few important tips that we should be keeping in our head before we even start writing the letter. That is spelling, punctuation and grammar. You have to take care of that because it is a writing task after all. Do not use abbreviations and slang, which is a common practice thanks to social media. But make sure you do not use any sort of slangs and abbreviations, even if it's a casual or a formal or an informal letter. This is an international exam, not an actual email to your friend. Keep the tone very light and warm. I have been talking about it throughout. The simple way to do that is be empathetic. Think from that person's perspective. How will that person feel after reading that sentence? Very simple way to keep the tone light and warm. Next, an informal letter should be informal. Writing a paragraph for each bullet point given in the question can be a good method of keeping the letter organized. Yes, this is a very important tip, that you have to read. Generally in your exams they give you the bullet points. So talk about this. So make sure for each bullet point you write one paragraph, so that your letter is organized and very easy for the examiner to give you marks, because the examiner knows that you have written and covered everything what is expected from you to cover. Okay. Now, next step is give personal anecdotes. Informal letters are incomplete without anecdotes. In the previous example, it talked about circus. There he talked about what mom did, what dad do, how did Steve reacted and all that stuff. Personal anecdote tells the examiner that you really know each other. In my sample answer I used the name Steve, Margaret and Aunt Mary without giving any explanation for who they exactly are, because my friend knows who they are. So you need not explain what's the relation, how is your mom or how is your dad. Whatever you address his mom, whatever you address his dad or her dad, whatever you address his or her sister or siblings or brother, basically siblings, so use their name directly, whatever you address them as, or their pets. This shows that how close you guys are and you know each other really well. Use time phrases. Example, shortly after that, later, that, afternoon, after dinner. Keep to the word limit. It should be at least 150 words and shouldn't exceed 200 words. However, okay. Alright, so basically 10 to 15 words extra here and there is okay, but stick to more or less to the word limits. No need to sit and count in each and every word. Just count the number of words in a single line and then multiply it by the number of line. You will get an idea of approximate words you have written. Writing more is fine, but don't write too less or too more. Like 10, 15 here and there is okay. Now moving on to the next very important type of letter is a formal letter. As the name says, it is generally for the purpose of a professional communication between a person and an organization or two professionals, and it is a very important letter from your professional life's perspective. Very important way, I would give you my personal example that whenever you write a formal letter, you have to maintain a tone of politeness, firmness and smart attitude. Please don't end up mixing firmness with rudeness, because it should not be rude. It should be firm, it should be direct, it should be clear, it should be polite, okay, and it should show the person that you are a smart person who knows to use the language in the right way. Okay, When you talk about formal letters, if you see the salutations, they are dear sir or madam, your faith. Okay, I forgot to talk about the format of informal and formal letters. They are pretty simple. So what I'll do is I'll update those formats on my Instagram handle. So do go there and check them out. They are pretty simple. You can just, what is important is what you need to write, but formats remain the same, where the address will come, where the subject will come. Informal method, it's very, very simple. Informal, it has a certain format which I'm going to post on in my Instagram handle. So use either of this format, dear sir or madam, yours faithfully, or dear Miss Weasley, yours sincerely. So if you don't know their name, you can use don't know their name. You can use yours faithfully and yours sincerely when you know their name. Okay, all right. Now the next is informal letters. Give some background information, like as I talked about previously. If you are wanting to complain about the increase in the service charges, so give some background information about your name, your account details, when did you open the account, which branch it is, etc., etc. That should be there in the first paragraph, or in the first, that is the introduction. And after you give some background, you can just dive into the background info. Okay, dive in straight to the point. Why are you writing? To appreciate, to complain, to suggest, to request, to disagree. What are you writing in regards with a new project, a newspaper, advertisement, all these things. This will come in your introduction. So why are you writing? You're writing to complain. So don't, first of all, especially I'm talking about the letters which will wherein you're supposed to complain about certain things. Don't start the complaint from the first introduction only. First give some background information, and then you start about your whatever you want to complain about. Again, there are certain phrases that you can use when you're complaining about things. For example, it was extremely disturbing to receive a mail from your bank last week wherein it talked about so and so stuff, let's say the increase in the fee and all that stuff. And then you can say that when I opened my account, I was assured that this will, and it is quite higher than the other banks when I compared. Use certain phrases which shows that you are disturbed because of that. When you're complaining, when you're appreciating, use certain phrases which shows that it is you are very happy about it and you really want the person to grow in life. So that part is really important. Without talking more about introduction, I will discuss much more about the language, about the exact phrases, especially in a dedicated classes wherein I'm discussing certain worksheets. So you do not forget to subscribe to this channel. Now moving on to the next part, that is the body of the letter. In the body, we talk about the previous history of or your background or experience. Say what happened exactly if you're making a complaint, or focus directly on the text you are arguing with. This section should include the specific data such as name, dates, facts, and details. As I talked about, talk about the main information. That name, dates, facts, detail, and be very, very, very specific in informal letters. Then give further support to your claim or request. Summarize your current situation and why you should be given consideration. Persuade the reader. Very important. You are not writing your formal letter just for time pass, right? You want the reader to take some action, and you should be persuading the reader in a very strong, firm, smart way. So do it. Okay. Now the conclusion is, again, what action you want him to take, him or her to take. Suggest firmly but politely, as I said that. Do not be rude. Please be firm yet polite. Okay. And what you might do if you don't receive a response to a complaint. Wrap up once again by stating your request and politely say something along the lines, I hope you will consider this and take action as soon as possible. Okay. Now, I personally believe in not writing as soon as possible. This is my personal experience, because I feel that when we talk about a certain day or date, it gives a target to that person psychologically, and that person is able to do that task. Then if I say as soon as possible, then that would be at their convenience. Whenever they want, they will do it. Whenever possible for them, they would do it. So if you can use that, it's very good. But if it's difficult for you to write it that way, then you can write this sentence as soon as possible. But yes, when I'm discussing few worksheets or few examples in the class, I will talk about how I write a formal letter. I try to be very specific with things. I personally try giving the okay. I would if you can revert back within a couple of days or within next week, before the next week, so that we can then further focus on other things, something like that, wherein I am giving some target to the other person. That is my personal style of writing formal letters or any letters. I tried setting up targets and goals, so that is something I do. But yes, you can write this phrase as soon as possible. Again, some tips: use formal vocabulary instead of can't wait for your reply. Say, I hope you will consider the above suggestion and take a prompt action. Don't use contractions like can't, won't, don't, were, etc. Use full forms. Contractions are informal. Please do not use them. Do not, don't. Both are the same thing. Don't is informal and do not means, it's a formal way of saying things. It's a complete no to use exclamations in your formal letters. No exclamation marks. Your tone should be serious yet respectful. It should not be rude. I'm telling you again and again, I have read a lot of formal letters that sounds rude. You are not supposed to insult the person or make that person feel bad. You are supposed to be firm yet very, very, very polite and respectful. Keep to the word limit. That goes without saying. Okay. Next is, we are all done with the class for the formal and the informal letters. I hope you enjoyed watching and you learned a lot in my class and you have taken a lot of notes. With regards to the structure, I will be shortly uploading by today or tomorrow morning at the most on my Instagram handle. And see you in the next class. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.